Have you ever wondered how a simple choice could change the course of an entire life? Often, we're so trapped in routines and limiting beliefs that we overlook opportunities hidden in the smallest gestures. Now, imagine a divorced businessman, lonely and burdened by his own expectations. On the other side, a humble housekeeper, accustomed to being invisible in a world that never gave her room to dream. Who would have thought that a simple invitation to a business dinner would profoundly transform both of their lives? You might think, this sounds like just another fictional story. But here's the truth. This isn't just a tale of overcoming adversity. It's a real story of narrated emotions, of rediscovering one's potential, and of second chances that few have the courage to take. Paolo, the businessman, thought he controlled everything. Maria, the housekeeper, saw herself as nothing more than simplicity personified, until life, with its unique sense of irony, placed them together in a situation that would unveil hidden strengths and change their destinies forever. Here's the most fascinating part. What began as a strategic gesture to impress a client became a powerful example of how moving stories can challenge prejudices, overcome barriers, and open doors to unimaginable futures. This isn't just a story about work or financial success. It's about the transformative power of human connections. It's a story about family, purpose, and how the most significant changes often start where we least expect them. If you've ever felt lost, directionless, or if you believe your life story lacks the impact you desire, this story is for you. Because what you'll discover here isn't just inspiring. It's a reminder that even the simplest stories can hold lessons that transform the world around us. Get ready to dive into the most moving story you'll hear today. And by the end, you might just ask yourself, what am I doing with my choices? Paolo was a successful man, but that word no longer held the shine it used to. After a painful divorce, he found himself trapped in a lifeless routine where the echoes of his house seemed more alive than he did. For many, success is synonymous with material achievements, but what happens when loneliness overshadows all of it? His only companion was Maria, a woman as discreet as she was efficient, who cared for the house as if it were her own, but never crossed the boundary of her role. This silent coexistence would become the starting point for a change neither of them could have foreseen. Imagine spending years alongside someone, seeing them day after day, without ever truly knowing who they are. Maria was that walking mystery. Working tirelessly, she limited herself to observing Paolo from a distance. On the other hand, he, caught up in his own thoughts, had never looked beyond her role in the household. This is something we all experience, isn't it? How often do we overlook the real-life stories around us, ignoring the human potential in every person? Paolo was about to learn this in the most unexpected way. The turning point came on an ordinary day with an extraordinary announcement. Paolo received an invitation to a business dinner with Pedro, a traditional and conservative businessman. The meeting was critical, but there was a problem. Pedro valued family principles, and Paolo's divorced status could be seen negatively. The pressure was immense. Then, in a moment of desperation, or perhaps inspiration, Paolo looked at Maria and saw an unlikely solution. He invited her to join him. Yes, the improbable is always the most intriguing, don't you think? When Paolo extended the invitation, Maria was speechless. After all, what did a business dinner have to do with her? For years, she had lived on the periphery of Paolo's world, never dreaming of being part of it. But at that moment, something inside her shifted. Her initial surprise was followed by a timid but meaningful yes. Isn't it fascinating how a simple yes can open the door to a massive transformation? Maria didn't know it yet, but she was about to embark on a journey that would rewrite her life story. And so, with what seemed like nothing more than Paolo's attempt to salvage a business deal, their destinies began to intertwine in ways no one could have imagined. But how would this seemingly ordinary dinner become the key to such profound changes? Well, that's where the real story starts to unfold. When the evening of the dinner arrived, Paolo made a decision that would not only change Maria's perception of herself, but also the way he saw her. He hired a stylist to prepare Maria, someone who could bring out a version of her that even she didn't know existed. Up until then, Maria embodied simplicity, modest clothing, practical hair, and no makeup. But that day, something extraordinary happened. She descended the stairs wearing an elegant black dress, subtle makeup, and hair styled to perfection. Paolo was at a loss for words. Maria wasn't just beautiful, she radiated confidence. Maria's transformation was much more than skin deep. For the first time, she had the chance to see herself as someone entirely different, someone who could walk alongside businessmen and executives without feeling out of place. Often, people don't recognize their own potential until the world around them reflects it back. Seeing her, Paolo realized there was more to Maria than met the eye. Possibilities just waiting for the right opportunity to surface. Maria, on the other hand, felt a mix of nervousness and surprise. She had never worn such a sophisticated dress or experienced the weight of admiring glances. It made her question everything she believed about herself. Isn't it amazing how an external change can ignite an internal spark? It's like rearranging a room. Sometimes all you need is to move the furniture around to see the space in a whole new light. That's how it was for Maria, who began to feel a newfound strength growing inside her. When they arrived at the restaurant, the impact was immediate. Pedro, the conservative businessman, greeted Maria with an approving smile. He knew nothing about her, yet her presence exuded respect and dignity that needed no explanation. Watching this, Paolo felt a mix of relief and pride. He knew he had made the right decision. It wasn't just about impressing Pedro, it was about giving Maria a chance to shine in a setting she had never imagined. But what started as a simple gesture to prepare for a social event was only the beginning of something far greater. After all, Maria's true transformation wasn't in the dress she wore or the way her hair was styled. It was in what that evening would set in motion from that moment on. Now they were ready to face the night, and what seemed like just another business dinner would become a turning point. As Paolo and Maria sat at the table with Pedro, the atmosphere seemed promising. Everything was going according to plan, formal greetings, polite smiles, and business talk. But when Pedro turned his attention to Maria, that's when the magic began. With a seemingly casual tone, he asked, "So, Maria, how did you meet Paolo?" It was a simple question, but it opened the door to something extraordinary. At first, Maria hesitated, unsure how much she should share. But something about Pedro's demeanor encouraged her to open up. Maria began telling her story. There were no embellishments, just raw honesty. She spoke about her humble upbringing, working from a young age to support her family, and the dreams she had to set aside to survive. Every word carried an emotional weight that seemed to captivate Pedro. A man accustomed to a world of numbers and cold negotiations, he listened intently, and the table, once so rigid, was enveloped in a respectful silence. Isn't it remarkable how simple, real-life stories have the power to disarm even the most guarded hearts? As Maria shared her life story, Paolo was taken aback. He had known her for years, yet it was as if he was discovering a completely different person. It wasn't just what she said, but how she said it, with an honesty that made every word feel like a treasure. He realized how much he had overlooked until that moment. How often do we move through life unaware of the powerful stories right next to us? That dinner was becoming an unplanned lesson in empathy and human connection. Pedro, for his part, was visibly moved. He shared that, despite building an empire, he hadn't felt so touched by someone in a long time. "Maria, your story is more inspiring than any motivational speech I've heard at conferences," he said, his eyes shining. That simple statement shifted the dynamics of the evening. It was no longer just a business dinner. It was a meeting of souls, where the focus shifted entirely from deals to what truly matters, narrated emotions and the values that connect us. What had started as Paolo's strategic move to save a negotiation was turning into something far greater. He hadn't planned for Maria to steal the spotlight, but that was exactly what was happening, and he couldn't be more grateful. But no one at that table could have predicted that this unexpected connection would become the catalyst for something even more transformative. As the dinner seemed to be winding down, Pedro did something completely unexpected. With a direct yet enthusiastic tone, he turned to Paolo and said, "I'll be honest, Paolo, I'm interested in our business partnership, but there's something else that caught my attention." The pause he took before continuing seemed to carry the weight of an important decision. I want Maria on my team. People like her are rare in the corporate world. Her authenticity and determination are qualities that can't be taught." The silence that followed was almost tangible. Paolo was momentarily frozen, trying to process what he had just heard. He had never imagined that his humble and reserved housekeeper would become the focus of such a grand offer. Meanwhile, Maria looked at Pedro with a mixture of surprise and disbelief. "Me? Work for you?" She could hardly believe what she was hearing. This was a reality she had never dared to envision. But sometimes the most transformative opportunities arrive when we least expect them, and they often come with a twinge of nervous excitement. Pedro continued, now addressing Maria directly. "I believe you have something that's missing in many people. What you showed here tonight isn't just a moving story, it's real inspiration. Someone with your background, your willpower, that's exactly what the world needs. Don't think of this as just a job. I want you to see it as a new chapter in your life story." His words were filled with intent, and Maria realized that this wasn't just empty praise, it was an opportunity that could completely alter her path. Maria looked to Paolo for a sign, a sense of approval. He, with an encouraging smile, simply said, "You deserve this, Maria. Take this chance. There's no doubt you're ready for something greater." That was the nudge she needed. With a lump in her throat and discreet tears in her eyes, she accepted. "I never imagined I'd have an opportunity like this, but I promise to give it my best," she said, her voice trembling yet full of determination. It was the beginning of a new chapter in her life, a chapter she could never have predicted. With her decision made, the dinner ended on a note of anticipation and hope. Maria knew she was about to step into a completely different world, one full of challenges but also of possibilities. Paolo, on the other hand, began to see things from a new perspective. Maria's choice not only opened doors for her, but also made Paolo question the paths he himself could take. After all, if one simple night could transform someone's life, what else might be waiting around the corner? The months following that evening were transformative for Maria. From a simple and predictable life, she dived headfirst into a completely new world, the corporate world. At first, everything felt overwhelming. Formal meetings, technical jargon, and the constant feeling of being tested. But Maria, with her unwavering determination, decided that none of this would make her give up. She began preparing diligently, studying late into the night and seeking help whenever needed. It was as if the story of her life had turned a page, and now she was writing a chapter filled with possibilities. Pedro, true to his promise, provided Maria with intensive training and constant support. He knew her potential was immense, but it needed to be refined. Maria, on the other hand, not only absorbed every lesson, but applied them with passion and dedication. Soon she began to stand out as one of the most promising people in the company. For someone who once couldn't imagine such a change, she had become the embodiment of how real stories of determination can unfold. Isn't it fascinating how destiny surprises us when we dare to believe in ourselves? Meanwhile, Paolo watched it all with a mix of pride and inspiration. Seeing Maria transform before his eyes made him reflect on his own life. He started to realize that, although he had achieved financial success, something essential was missing, a greater purpose. That's when he decided to create New Horizons, an NGO dedicated to helping vulnerable individuals find education and job opportunities. Inspired by Maria, he wanted others to have the chance to rewrite their own moving stories, just as she had done. Maria and Paolo stayed in constant contact, and their conversations went far beyond work. It was as if the growth of one inspired the other to keep going. Maria shared the challenges and victories of her new role, while Paolo talked about the early successes of the NGO. They had something rare, a friendship that not only connected them, but also pushed them forward. In moments of doubt, they found strength in each other's words. After all, true growth doesn't happen in isolation. It is nurtured by genuine, meaningful relationships. Over time, Maria was no longer seen as someone in training, but as a natural leader. Her work ethic, combined with the humility she never abandoned, made her admired by everyone around her. Paolo, in turn, discovered a completely new side of himself, finding joy and fulfillment in seeing the positive impact of his NGO. It was as if their journeys, though different, were tied together by an invisible thread of mutual transformation. and both knew there was still so much more to come. Over time, the friendship between Maria and Paolo became something rare and precious. What started as a formal employer-employee relationship evolved into a genuine bond built on mutual respect and admiration. They shared ideas, dreams, and, most importantly, a common vision. That real-life stories like theirs had the power to transform lives. It wasn't just about individual success, but about creating something greater, something that could impact others. Maria, now firmly rooted in the corporate world, and Paolo, leading the NGO, began to join forces in unexpected ways. The projects they designed together were always filled with meaning. Maria brought to the table not only her newly acquired executive skills, but also the perspective of someone who had overcome significant challenges. Paolo, on the other hand, injected energy and resources into initiatives aimed at changing lives. One day, while discussing a new educational campaign for young people, Maria suggested an idea that deeply resonated. What if we give people a platform to share their stories? Nothing is more powerful than a moving story that someone can truly feel. This idea became a cornerstone of their future projects. Their partnership wasn't just about work, it was about mutual learning. Maria showed Paolo that impact isn't measured solely in numbers, but in emotions narrated and lives touched. Paolo, in turn, encouraged Maria to think bigger, to believe that what she was doing was just the beginning of something extraordinary. These constant exchanges strengthened not only the projects they developed, but also their personal growth. Isn't it amazing how a seemingly casual encounter can become a driving force for mutual transformation? Even with busy schedules, they always made time for deeper conversations. Paolo, once a man focused solely on financial goals, now spent his days helping others rewrite their own life stories. Maria, having reinvented herself as an admired leader, made it a point to return to her roots, reminding herself of where she came from and reinforcing her values. During one of these conversations, Maria said something that profoundly touched Paolo. What we do together isn't just work. It's planting seeds that will grow in places we can't even imagine. This partnership, however, was just beginning to reveal its true potential. As the two continued to create impactful initiatives, the world around them started to take notice. But it would only be a matter of time before this collaboration would take them to a much larger stage, where their personal stories would become a source of inspiration for countless others. After all, a genuine and collaborative friendship is like a bridge to something much greater, and this bridge had many more paths to cross. As time went on, Maria and Paolo began to attract attention beyond their usual circles. The initiatives they developed together, whether in the corporate world or through the NGO New Horizons, started impacting entire communities. People wondered, how could such a simple story, a businessman and his former housekeeper, generate such profound change? That's how, unexpectedly, they were invited to speak at an international conference on leadership and personal transformation. It was a chance to share not just their achievements, but the essence of their journey, that the most profound changes come from the most unexpected places. On stage, before a packed audience, Paolo began sharing his version of events. He spoke about how what seemed like just another business dinner ended up completely changing his life. Maria taught me that the most inspiring stories come from the most unlikely people. She not only transformed her own life, but showed me what truly matters, helping others see their potential. Maria, in turn, moved the audience as she recounted her journey. I never imagined I'd have this opportunity, but what I've learned is that it doesn't matter where you come from, it matters who you choose to become. Their words were met with a standing ovation. The impact was immediate. Articles were published, stories were shared, and videos of their speeches went viral. But public recognition was never Maria or Paolo's primary goal. The real legacy lay in the people directly impacted by their initiatives. Young individuals who once lacked access to education were now graduating and building careers. Families who once faced financial struggles found new opportunities. Each of these real-life stories was a testament to the legacy they were building together. Maria, now an influential leader, made a point of using her visibility to inspire others. She began mentoring women in situations similar to what she had experienced, showing that even a simple shift in perspective can be the first step toward transforming a life. Paulo, on the other hand, focused entirely on expanding the NGO, working to reach more distant communities. What united them was a shared mission to prove that everyone has the power to write the most moving and impactful story in the world, their own. And so, Maria and Paulo continued to grow, always keeping their feet on the ground and their hearts connected to their origins. They knew that recognition was merely a reflection of the work they did with passion and purpose. For them, what truly mattered wasn't the applause but the silent impact. The moment someone, inspired by their stories, decided to change their life. And while the international stage celebrated their achievements, the two kept their eyes on the horizon, ready to keep writing new chapters of this incredible journey. After everything they had experienced, Maria and Paulo often found themselves reflecting on how much their lives had changed since that dinner. It was almost surreal to think that something so simple could trigger such profound transformations. One afternoon, as they walked together through the newly built educational center, funded by the NGO, Maria asked, "Do you think all of this was destiny?" Paulo, with a nostalgic smile, replied, "I don't know if it was destiny, but I know we had the courage to seize the opportunity when it appeared, and that was a lesson they both carried with them. The greatest changes start with the smallest steps." Maria, now a well-recognized executive, looked back with gratitude, not just for everything she had achieved, but for the people who believed in her along the way. "If it weren't for that dinner, I would have never seen that I was capable of more," she once said in an interview. But what was even more interesting was that this change didn't stop with her. Every life Maria touched, directly or indirectly, became a living testament to the fact that moving stories and real determination could create ripples of transformation. It's like throwing a stone into a lake. The initial impact is small, but the ripples go far beyond. Paulo, in turn, found a new purpose that went beyond his old business goals. He used to measure success by his bank account. Now he measured it by the number of lives he could impact. "I never imagined that one simple act, like inviting Maria to that dinner, would transform my worldview," he often reflected. But the truth is, that perspective was shaped not only by the experiences they lived, but also by the deep, honest conversations they shared along the way. Those exchanges were the heart of their journey. Both acknowledged that the path hadn't been easy. There were challenges, moments of doubt, and of course mistakes along the way. But there was also something that kept them grounded, the certainty that they were building something meaningful. Maria often said, "No matter how hard it gets, it's always worth it when you're helping someone see their own worth." And Paulo would add, "The greatest stories of triumph are the ones that inspire others to write their own." These phrases became mantras for both, guiding them and reminding them why they began this journey. As the sun set that afternoon, they stopped to watch the young people at the educational center, laughing, learning, and dreaming of a better future. It was a sight that filled them with hope. "Did you ever imagine all of this when you invited me to that dinner?" Maria asked with a smile. Paulo shook his head, chuckling softly. "Not in a million years. But you know what's the most beautiful part? Knowing this is just the beginning." And at that moment, as the horizon reflected the golden glow of the sunset, they both knew that their stories still had so much more to offer, not just for them, but for everyone willing to believe in the power of human connections. As the years went by, the New Horizons NGO became a symbol of hope and transformation. For Maria and Paulo, every young person who walked through the doors of the center was more than just a participant seeking opportunities. They were a new story waiting to be written. The joy of seeing someone complete a course, land their first job, or even inspire others was indescribable. There was no doubt that the impact they were creating far exceeded anything they had ever imagined. Each success story was a reminder that the most profound changes often start with the simplest gestures. Maria, now a respected figure in the corporate world, never strayed far from her roots. Despite her leadership roles, she made it a point to return to the educational centers to mentor young people. "It's not enough to reach the top," she often said. "You have to look back and help others climb too." Her conversations with these young individuals were always filled with real-life stories, showing them that no matter where they started, what mattered most was how they chose to move forward. And when she shared her own experiences, Many saw themselves reflected in her journey, realizing they too could transform their lives. Paulo, on the other hand, dedicated himself to expanding the NGO's reach, forging partnerships and creating new programs to serve more distant communities. He understood that not everyone would be as fortunate as Maria, stumbling upon an opportunity by chance. That's why he wanted to ensure that no one had to rely solely on luck. "What we're building isn't just an organization," he often said during meetings. "It's a movement that empowers people to believe in themselves." His enthusiasm was contagious, and each successful project was another step forward in building a lasting legacy. The impact of Maria and Paulo's partnership wasn't confined to those directly involved with the NGO or Pedro's company. Their stories began inspiring other organizations to invest in education and social inclusion. They were frequently invited to speak at conferences, where they shared their experiences authentically and emotionally. What was most remarkable was how their words resonated with audiences. "The most moving story you can tell is the one that inspires someone to change," Paulo liked to say. That simple but powerful message echoed wherever they went. And so Maria and Paulo continued on their paths, knowing there was still so much more to be done. For them, each life touched was a victory, and each challenge overcome was proof they were on the right track. As they looked back at everything they had built, the lesson was clear. True success isn't about accumulating wealth or personal achievements. It's about using your experiences to create something meaningful for others. And as they watched young people take their first steps toward new beginnings, Maria turned to Paulo and said, "Do you realize how simple stories can change the world?" He smiled, knowing that they were only at the start of something much greater. Now that you've followed this incredible story of transformation, take a moment to reflect. What are you doing to change your life or impact others? Paulo and Maria showed us that the opportunities for transformation aren't just in grand events, but in seemingly small choices and acts of courage. Are you noticing the possibilities around you, or are you letting them slip by unnoticed? Remember, even the world's most moving story starts with a simple decision to believe in yourself and take the first step. And you? What are you waiting for to start writing your own inspiring story? Maybe it's time to revisit your beliefs, seek new opportunities, or even give someone the chance, like Maria, to reveal their true potential. Ask yourself, what will your legacy be? How do you want to be remembered? What are you doing today to transform your life or someone else's? These questions may be uncomfortable, but they're essential to push you to the next level. Now, I have a challenge for you. How about taking the next step toward your transformation? It could be a simple gesture, helping someone in need, starting that course you've been postponing, or reflecting on your own stories of triumph. Share in the comments what inspires you the most, or what you plan to do from now on. Let's create a ripple effect of real changes, a collective story that inspires the world. And if you want to keep learning, connecting with moving stories, and gaining valuable insights, subscribe to the channel now. Turn on notifications so you don't miss anything new. Together, we can transform lives, including yours. Believe me, the next moving story we hear might just be yours. So what are you waiting for? Join this journey and discover the impact you can make in the world.